It has been a while.
It's been a while.
Struggling to remember what buttons to push when.
I know. I don't remember how to do life mostly.
Yeah. Everything is different now, isn't it?
Everything is different. In love with movies. In love, in love.
Dani and Nic.
In love with movies. Da-da-da.
Welcome back to In Love with Movies.
You forgot to say welcome, movie lovers, to In Love with Movies. I'm
You're
Dani.
right. The welcome back is normally after the second half. So hi there, movie lovers. I don't know if you could tell. It's been a while. It's been a while since we recorded. Those of you who have been following us the entire time know that we did a bunch of batch recordings so that we had time after this thing was born. And for those of you who are not watching on either YouTube or Spotify, I am pointing to a child that is strapped to my chest right now.
Yeah, I think I said this earlier. We just got real dumb. Like, all the brain power I had went into creating that, getting it out, and keeping it alive. So, sorry if this episode sucks. Did we say I'm Dani and I'm Nic?
We did not yet.
Oh.
Nope. So I'm Dani.
Welcome, movie lovers.
Oh man, this is already off to a horrible start. Apologies to everyone. This is In Love with Movies. Dani, what do we do here at In Love with Movies?
Yeah, usually we talk about movies and love.
That's right.
I don't know what we're going to talk about today.
Well, we have a movie to talk about.
No, I just mean, like, I don't know what's going to come out of our mouths.
We are, so Sleep is actually doing pretty good relative to what we've heard from other people. The little guy is 11 weeks now as we are recording this. That's how many we had batched available to us. So things are going pretty well, all things considered, but it's all relative. Just because we feel like we're functioning, our brains may be operating at like 80%. So, words are hard.
Yeah. And I go back to work tomorrow, and I'm going to be not useful. My boss has been itching for me to come back. I'm like, just you wait.
Yeah, you're going to send her this episode and be like, this is my feelings about it.
Like, my brain itches. And we both had large coffees this morning.
Indeed, we did.
You had an extra shot.
I'm still working on mine, in fact. Oh. Yeah, maybe that's why I haven't had enough of it yet.
I think, if you're watching, I think he's had enough of it.
Well, and I also haven't done my productivity shot today, which will remain nameless because they have not spoken back to us yet.
They're not our sponsors anymore.
So they don't get their name said. No, so we're revisiting things, and a while ago, if you've been listening, you know that when we did our crossover episode with Superhero Cinephiles, we did a shorter sort of questions of your anticipation of labor, and so we're going to revisit some of those questions for the love portion of our podcast, and we're going to see, did Danielle make the correct predictions? Are there different feelings that she has about those things now that we are post-labor of love here?
That's a nice way to say it, labor of love.
There you go. It is a labor of love. It is labor, but it was a labor of love, and it produced something lovely.
Yeah, very lovely.
We like this little nugget pretty much.
He cute.
So we will talk about that, and then what are we going to be discussing on the second half? What's going to be our movie portion of the podcast?
Oh, we watched X-Men, which I have a lot of notes and feelings about. I'm actually excited to talk about it.
I'm genuinely excited as well. I can't wait to see that. So for movie lovers who don't like us talking about kids, I know there are some of you who are very much excited about this. I think those of you who are anywhere close to thinking you are going to have kids, it might be worth listening to this. Some people come into mind specifically. The rest of you, if you don't like this stuff, I totally get it. No blames. Look for in the notes, the show notes, you'll see when the movie chat starts. And I think it's going to be a very fun conversation about the movie X-Men. Part of the reason we're doing that is because Deadpool Wolverine is coming out, and Danielle had not ever seen any movie with Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. So we had to start from the beginning.
Only with Hugh Jackman as, from now on.
The Greatest Showman? You're trying to talk about The Greatest Showman? Ooh.
Yeah, what his character was. This might be a very short podcast because our child just woke up from his nap.
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe he'll end up having to. We'll have to choose to do things later. We'll figure it out. All right, well, we'll be editing that anyhow. I mean, we might as well launch into then getting to our love portion of the podcast. We have questions to answer. So, right off the bat, what were you most excited about after a kid was born? And do you think it stays the same? What were you most excited for post kid? What were you most excited for once he was gone? Once he was out of you, and you were now a mother rather than a person who was pregnant.
I think I said dressing him in cute clothes.
That was
and
you
hanging
said
out with him.
You wanted you wanted to have a little companion that you could dress up.
companion.
Yes. How much have you dressed him up?
He's got some cute little dress-up outfits. He wore a tuxedo.
That was a very cute tuxedo. Thank you, former guests on the podcast, friends, the pod, the Gatos. They lent us a tuxedo for a wedding.
2 tuxedos, actually, because he...
Yeah, he wrecked
the
one.
first one.
In fact, he wrecked the second one, too. We ended up having to change him out of both, but that's how things go.
So what am I most excited about now that he's on the outside world?
What do you think is the most exciting part about having him? Yeah.
Just seeing him grow. I mean, he's almost 3 months old, and the amount he has changed in 3 months is unbelievable.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
To be honest, I didn't think I was gonna like a little turd this much. By little turd, I mean a baby. I was like very skeptical. I remember us having conversations where I'm like, I don't know if I'm maternal. I hate babies. I really do not like babies. I think they're gross, and it's shocking how gross he is. And how I'm just like, oh, you just shit up the wall. You're so cute. So I'm most excited to just keep seeing him grow and learn. Like, his new thing, this sounds so dumb for those of you who don't have babies or don't really care about babies, but his new thing is he can put his hands together.
One hand finds the other hand, and that's the most adorable thing ever.
And when he smiles, your whole heart lights up.
Seriously, yeah. I'm not looking forward to when he has like real emotions, because smiling is kind of the only thing he does other than frown right now and cry, and it's just sort of like he's such a happy baby overall. I hope that reads into his overall life temperament, because he is very happy. But yeah, that smile, like, you could be having the worst day. He could have done something where he just screamed in your ear and made you so cranky and upset and maybe mad at him even, or he, crapped everywhere and, was doing a rough job that way. And then the next thing you know, he's smiling at you, and it's just like, I forgive everything you have ever done or will ever do.
Mm-hmm. I understand deeply why people love babies now.
Yeah.
I love my own. Will I still love other babies? Probably not.
I will say, so I'm of two minds, because I have said to you, like, the part about whether you thought you would be maternal or not, I had very little doubts. So that part I kind of have been a little dismissive, maybe, and unintentionally sort of, gaslight's too strong of a word, but, made you feel like I wasn't listening to you. So I've been saying, like, oh, no, of course, I knew you would be a good mother. I knew you'd be okay with this. I knew you'd love the guy. All of that's true, but there was another part of me, because if people have been listening the whole time, they know some of our journey, and, like, we were thinking about moving to different places, and you kept me in Chicago, and for a long time you said, no, it's okay, we'll do that. No, it's okay, we'll do that. And then when chips hit the floor, you were like, no, we're not doing that. And so I have lived with a little bit of anxiety for a long time when we would talk about kids, because you kept saying, like, no, I want them, just not right now. I want them, just not right now. No, like, I'm ready. I'm just scared about this one part. I do want to have a kid. I'm just scared about this one part. And so it started making me very anxious that perhaps it would be like moving from Chicago, that once the kid was actually here, once the chips were on the ground, once we're like, okay, we're ready to move, okay, we're ready for this next chapter, all of a sudden you would come to terms and realize, nope, you were anxious, you didn't want to have a kid after all, and it would be too damn late. But that did not happen.
No, quite the opposite, actually.
Yeah.
I'm proud of myself for how connected I am to this little thing and how much I want to be with him at all times.
I know.
I'm like obsessed with him.
You're not excited for going back to work tomorrow, I know. So I work from home, as some movie lovers will know, but I will have also say that the first time I had to leave the house for like a professional conference that was just in the city, but literally had to spend like, more than 12 hours away from you and him in the city. That was hard. And then working from home, this is the part I think you're underestimating, if I'm being totally honest. I think you're going to find that working from home is harder, because you can hear him. He's right on the other side of the door. You want to spend time with him, but you have to do your job.
Yeah.
And that is a difficult feeling to navigate.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, tomorrow I have to go into the office, and that'll be weird.
I actually think it's probably, I know you were like thinking you were going to work from home the first time and you thought that would make it better. I think you leaving will make it better, because it's kind of like tearing off the Band-Aid a little bit, so that it feels like a step backwards and a step closer to him when you do work from home.
Yeah, this is just like, as of this recording, tomorrow is literally going to be the first time I'm not with him for more than 2 hours at a time in like a year, because he's been inside of me and then he's outside of me, and he's connected to me at all times. So
yeah.
And I think you were talking about, you were nervous that I was going to hate the thing and regret the thing. I also understand why you felt that way, because I still hate pregnancy. Being pregnant is awful. And that's just my experience. However, I don't like it.
But that's a good conversation because, we've had people that said, like, you think pregnancy's bad, wait till breastfeeding, or you think pregnancy's bad, wait till you can't get any sleep because the kid's a newborn. Like, all of those sorts of things. Which do you think has been better or worse for you? Pregnancy or, like, immediately newborn?
Those are different kinds of tired.
Okay.
And different kinds of... But I will say, I still freaking hate pregnancy more than anything. Just the sleep deprivation in the first month, I think, was an adjustment for us. But we're good now.
Yeah.
We lost all our brain cells, but we're still much better than I think. The first couple days coming home from the hospital was really, really tough.
Yeah, and I think that it is important for us to note as well that we have, I think, knock on wood, been pretty blessed. Some of the people we've had on the podcast who had, more colicky babies or had other issues, like some people were like basically the first 2 weeks that we had was their life for the first 5 months of their kid's birth.
Yeah.
Whereas us, we're in week 11 and he is at the point now where, if we put him down around 7 p.m., he probably sleeps until at least 1 or 2 a.m. the first time and then sleeps for probably another 3 to 4 hours and then another 2 to 3 hours after that. So we basically make it, despite having to wake up occasionally, he sleeps most of the way through the night already. And that's huge compared to where some other people were at this stage.
Yeah, agreed. And I will say also, as a woman, the first couple weeks after giving birth are just physically difficult.
Sure.
Truly, truly one of the hardest things I've ever done. It's just like surviving with a gaping hole in your body that you don't talk about. Like, women don't typically talk about, or people don't talk about, the recovery process for the mother.
Sure.
You always talk about the baby, you always talk about the birth, and then the baby, and then like, okay, go bounce back. I was in diapers for weeks. I couldn't go up the stairs the first couple of days. Like, I was so exhausted. The first 2 weeks, I watched a lot of Housewives, but I could not get off the couch, and I thought that was going to be my existence. And then I was crying constantly. Not constantly, but,
I was going to say, not constantly.
Off and on, I would just cry, and you'd say, what's wrong? And I'd say, I don't know.
Sure.
My body just needed to, like, expel sadness.
Yeah, and we also had a couple of times where we almost got in fights, I would say, because I was having battled with depression myself, or wrestled with, maybe battled is too strong. Anyway, having depression, I was sort of extra, I think, cautious and like making sure that we were watching for signs of postpartum with you. Which
is not a bad thing.
Correct, but it got on your nerves, I think, occasionally, because there were times that, and this is very legitimate, like, just because you're crying does not mean you have postpartum depression. Like,
right.
There are huge swings in your hormones and everything that are just gonna happen. And so, I think there was maybe 2, maybe 3 days where it was like the whole day you were just a different person. Mm-hmm. And those were the days that I think I got on your nerves because I kind of kept watching it and kept commenting on it and saying, do we need to talk to somebody? When's your next therapy session? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it never became anything where you like had 4 or 5 or 5 days, or a week. It was just like you'd have a day where that day really sucked. And then you'd the next day, still be tired, but like be back to your normal self otherwise.
Yeah. And I am so extremely lucky that that's how my experience was, because a lot of women, it's not.
Yeah.
And they live that way. And it just like, I'm almost tearing up thinking about it because it hurts my heart to think that women have to feel that for so long.
Yeah, I mean, like, think about what you felt like on those days.
Yeah.
And then imagine that being your existence for weeks at a time.
Yeah. So if you feel like you have postpartum depression, anxiety, reach out to someone.
It's
perfectly
so
normal. Hard. I had none of it. I just had the baby blues and the hormone drops, which is your body regenerating essentially. And it was hard. It was really, really hard. So
yeah.
Plus, I'd like to just reiterate, women are freaking strong as hell.
Well, the episode that we had for the last time we had this first half of this conversation was that women are Wonder Women, which is accurate.
Yeah, my body did literally so much. So it's it was a process. What was the question? What was I excited about?
That was what we started with. What were you most excited about? It's good. We had a nice, good, long conversation. Now, I will say, the other thing you said you were excited for was sushi. Was sushi your first meal? I can't remember.
It was the first meal we ordered out, yeah.
Yeah, so like you maybe had some food or whatever that they were willing to feed you at the hospital.
Yeah, like broccoli. And
yeah, but then, I remember going to get sushi. I just couldn't remember if it was the first thing or not.
Oh, yeah. It was delicious.
All right, now with that, What was your first alcoholic beverage?
I think I had a glass of wine.
Which is so funny. Do you remember what you said the first time when I asked you this question, what you thought it would be?
I think I said a glass of wine.
Yeah, but you said, like, I want a margarita,
I
but I don't think a margarita will go well with other things,
With
so I'll
sushi,
probably end up having just a glass of wine, which is exactly what happened.
Since then, I have had a margarita. It was kind of chunky. It wasn't very good. But we went to a wedding recently, and I planned ahead. You know, I pumped all the extra milk to bring, and I had 3 Palomas, and ooh, baby, those hit good.
The Palomas hit good?
Yeah, not the next day. Like, I was hungover at like 6 p.m.
Well, it was a day wedding.
Yeah.
That's, that happens. That's okay.
Don't miss hangovers, but you know what? That hangover was...
Worth it?
Yes, and easier than being pregnant.
So speaking of how easy it is or how things are going, how long would you say it was, or are you there yet? Because remember, we're at 11 weeks. That you felt more like you were quote unquote back to normal? At what point do you feel like you were back to normal?
I'm not back to normal.
Still not normal?
No.
Okay.
As I sit here, I'm like, my back hurts. I'm just tired. But I do think maybe I was talking about working out and all that stuff. I felt like I was able to move my body and do a lot more like 3 weeks, 4 weeks afterwards. I'm back to teaching yoga classes. That's like my happy place. And I'm feeling stronger every day.
When did you go back to teaching? I can't remember. How many weeks?
8 weeks.
8 weeks. I do remember, like, we were coming close up onto the 6 weeks, and you were already like...
I already had plans in place.
Yeah, well, not only that, you were like, I want to return. Like, week 3 or, like, maybe not 3, 4 or 5, I feel like, at least 5.
Yeah.
You were definitely like, I want to do things, and we were like, you have your doctor's appointment next week. You have to wait until the doctor says you're good.
I was literally counting down the days till that 6-week checkup, and the doctor was like, oh, you're great. You're good. You're fine. And that day I went to a yoga class, literally right after the doctor's appointment.
Which is so funny because the morning that you were induced...
Did yoga.
The moment, the afternoon after you were cleared, did yoga.
And I will say, again, everything I'm saying is my experience, not every woman's experience. Like, some people I've heard, there was someone talking to me the other day who said she couldn't drive for 6 months after giving birth because her core was so messed up that she couldn't, like, lift her feet. That was not my experience, luckily, but I will also credit it not to good diet. All I ate was gummy bears when I was pregnant, but I worked out a lot, especially in the 3rd trimester. Like, I didn't really stop moving, and I think that helped my body so much, especially when it came to, like, expelling a child. I did it in about 38 minutes and, like, laughed through it.
Yeah.
And again, that is not everyone's experience. I'm so very lucky. I'm blessed that we just, like, it was pretty easy, but
yeah, I think
my
it's good.
core was pretty strong.
I think it's good and important to remember that, but yeah, it's okay that we'll keep giving that note. I will say, just, everyone, like, this is us sort of recapping what our experience was compared to the experience you were expecting. Speaking of, what was his weight when he was born?
8 pounds, 3 ounces.
So you were off by 6 ounces. Because you had guessed 7 pounds, 13 ounces. Not bad. You're pretty close.
I remember saying, I'm manifesting smaller because I didn't want to push out a big head.
Yeah, you said 7 pounds, 13, and then you were like, but I manifest less than that. So it didn't turn out manifesting as well as you might have thought.
He was 8'3". It didn't matter. His head was very large, and she ripped, baby.
Yeah, and I obviously should not be the one who always does this, although I always am the one to be the one who says, just like you keep saying, that's not everyone's experience, it's not everyone's experience. Your experience, relatively speaking, to what we have been told medically is possible was, it's what was 2nd degree, right? So there's up to 4th degree tears. 1st degree is like, kind of barely happened. 2nd degree is, it required some stitches. And then 4th degree is like tit to taint. Like, you're
Tit.
the whole thing. Everything's
From your
done.
boob to your
Yep,
butt?
all the way. Yep, all the way past the belly button.
And I keep reminding Nick, it doesn't matter. My vagina ripped open, and I had stitches.
So yeah, that definitely could have been better, could have been worse.
It hurt.
Could have been
It hurts to go to the bathroom for a very long time. The first time I pooped, I was like tears streaming down my face.
Yeah, I remember that. I also feel like even if you had 0 degree tear, still probably would not exactly have been comfortable after the fact.
You went through trauma. Yeah, it was rough. I mean, the first night, remember, in the hospital, I just sat on the toilet and I was sobbing just because my whole body ached in a way that I had never felt before. Uh-oh.
We may have a stir. We'll see. But let's see if before we have to maybe cut... Oh. Is the cut over? Oh, we may be past it. Okay.
We're crying. No.
All right, we're going to hit pause, everybody. We'll see you after the edit.
In love with movies. Da da da.
And we're back again through the magic of podcasting. Hours later, having done lots of other chores and stuff in the middle, as Danielle drops things, apparently.
I dropped my phone. My bad. Yes, it's been precisely 6... Did you say that? 6 hours?
I didn't say how many hours.
I think it's been 6 hours since we were talking before.
Isn't it magical to have podcasting? This is something we're going to have to worry about when it comes to having guests in the future, but I guess that's why we're testing things out with just our two of us.
Just the two of us.
Well, we'll pick up right where we left off with regards to a series of questions. We had actually pretty much reached a lull where it was going to specifically and perfectly feed into, so those of you who've been listening probably know about 30 seconds ago, it would have made sense for me to ask this next question. You were talking about the birthing and what it was like and other people's experience when you first said that when I asked you what you were most nervous for, you had said giving birth because you have been told that it could be the worst possible experience ever, or it could be like taking a big dump. Mm-hmm. So, between worst feeling you've ever had in your life or taking a big dump, which one was it closest to?
Again, caveat for me, personally.
Your personal experience.
Truly thought I was pooping. Well, I did poop. And I asked. I made sure. I said, did I just poop? And the nurse was like, oh, no. I was like, no, you need to tell me. And she said, yeah, you did.
Yeah, that was actually really funny.
No, I mean, we've described this to a lot of our friends, but I think, first of all, I had an epidural. Like, listen, I didn't do this on my own. I still did it, but, like, I didn't feel many things. But I was able to kind of just, like, know that this was happening. I was surrounded truly in a semicircle by Nick, a doula, a doctor who I trusted and who I really liked. And what we did, I don't know if we talked about doing this. I don't think we had thought about it, maybe. We created a Spotify playlist and we sent the link to all of our friends. And
we're very excited to listen to it.
Yeah, we had over 12 hours of music, and that was going to be like our birthing playlist. And he came out in like 38 minutes.
Yeah.
To the RuPaul song, Call Me Mother. So it was just,
Call Me Mother.
It was perfect. But I felt like I was kind of a bit on stage. I don't know if, listeners, Nick, you know this. I enjoy attention. both of those. So literally people had to pay attention to me. And in between contractions, I feel like I was doing my tight 30, The doctor at one point said I was going to laugh the baby out, so. But.
Almost true.
I don't know. I anticipated being really, really, really scared. And instead I was just like, I don't want to be pregnant anymore. And my body kind of just knew what to do. Like, I was induced, which means, for those of you who don't know, they made me go into labor, essentially.
Yep.
Most of the time, especially for first-time moms, it takes like 24 to 48 hours. For me, it took 12. And it was so fast that I called the nurse in at one point at like 5 a.m. and I was like, hi, I think I'm in labor. Because I truly felt like my butt was going to fall out of my butt. It's going to fall out of itself, out of my body. I don't know. It was like the heaviest feeling in my entire life.
Yeah, and I remember it was like 4 a.m. and you called her in and she was kind of basically like, okay, sure.
Yeah, she's like, you want me to check for you, honey? And I was like, yeah, please do. Actually, she's a little nicer than that because she was younger.
She was nice about it, but you could tell that was very much the energy. It was like, okay, sure, whatever.
Yeah, and she like did a little check, put her finger in. It was like, don't push. Because the head was right there. I just knew I was in labor.
Like she literally did, oh, that's his head. And then left the room saying, don't push. That was hilarious. I'm going to go get your doctor.
Yeah. And the doctor, she was sleeping because she thought I was going to take so much longer.
Because it was 4 a.m. and we thought we were timing it for like 8 or 10.
No, she thought like 4 p.m. almost.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so I had to hold the baby in for like an hour and a half because my doctor had to wake up and get over here.
So that's funny to me because that leads into, and you've almost touched on two things that you also said in the last episode that we talked about this. So your thing that you were most nervous for was different from both your first and your best. What you anticipated would be the worst and the best things. Okay. So the worst thing you anticipated would be waiting. We slept through most of the waiting. Like the actual hours that we're waiting, we were both asleep. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it was, that hour and a half maybe sucked while you were trying to hold things in, but it wasn't like you were spending. You were describing like, I think I'm going to be 12 to 48 hours just sitting there. Yeah,
that's true. We did end up.
Not the case.
We wrote a couple of thank you cards from our shower.
Yep.
I watched a lot of Drag Race.
Yep.
And I did nap.
At one point, the doctor who came in to do the epidural was like, "What are you watching?" Because you had Drag Race España
like,
on, and there's this weird shit happening. You also thought the best thing would be rocking to our playlist and having the doula there, and me to cheer you on the whole time, and you just feeling like a bad bitch. So
I did feel like a bad bitch. It was just so interesting because I've never been in a hospital. Like that was the first time I ever had an IV.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never really taken pain medication. I've never had surgery. And so not being able to feel my lower half was very strange. So the nurse had to tell me when to push. And it was very interesting. Our child is asleep right now, but in a very weird position in which I get nervous. Trying to make sure
he can both breathe and is not like cricking his neck. Yeah. Well, so that addresses, I think, all of the things that we specifically had gotten to in the episode that we talked about this before.
Okay.
Is there any other additional thoughts, advice, things that you sort of think about, you wish you maybe knew, etc., about giving birth?
Honestly, for me, again, caveat, because it's so hit or miss, and that's why I don't want to really do it again, because we had such a good experience that I'm like, what if something bad happens next time? But anyways, for me, the worst part was we were in the hospital for 5 days afterwards, and we had a, quote, healthy baby, but he was jaundiced.
Yeah.
And so that was really, really hard to, like, they were waiting. They're like, maybe. And then day 3, they said, oh, you guys, he has to be in a box for 24 hours. And so this little 3-year-old baby.
3-day-year-old.
3-day-year-old. We're not
man.
Okay. We're so dumb.
3-day-old.
Little 3-day-old Hayden was wearing, like, these fly-looking goggles, sitting in a box under a light with a mat on his back, and we, like, really weren't supposed to hold him.
Yeah, that sucked.
It was just really, really hard. And then also, to be honest, being there for 5 days was awful because we were so sleep-deprived, and nurses come in every 30 minutes, which is great.
Yeah.
Like, I had someone at 2 a.m. trying to teach me how to feed my baby.
Yeah.
Like, that is so helpful, and nurses are truly angels. Like, they are changing my diaper. They are making sure that I'm okay.
Yeah.
And we had so many lactation consultants come in. We had so many people just really, really wanting to help us. But we didn't sleep for like 5 days. We got maybe 30 minutes here and there. And that was so hard.
Yeah.
So then when we came back, we like weren't okay.
Yeah. And that's the thing is we had joked about that after the fact because everyone talks about, you know, your first days are just going to be such a blur and everything. You're going to be so sleep deprived. It's like we were. But the majority of that sleep deprivation
was because of the hospital.
Yeah, was because of the hospital checking on us. Now, granted, I can remember the one time that they like kind of took that feedback from us and said, okay, we'll give you guys a few hours. And then that was the one time that they had not checked on us for a while. And we awoke to him like gurgling and just the beginnings of aspirating. And I had to like jump up and make sure he was okay and make sure he wasn't gagging on his own like spit up. So maybe it's better for them to interrupt, you know, but that is just the nature of the beast, so to speak. And that is not something I anticipated, but it is, as you said, you know, God's work, no pun intended. It is very much blessed people. And, you know, we have some who are probably listeners I don't even know about, but you and I have family members that may or may not be listening. Welcome new cousin-in-law is a postpartum nurse. And my brother's a NICU nurse who, like, that's the other thing I was thinking about is that little box that we couldn't touch him for 24 hours. Imagine having hundreds like a NICU baby that, your kid is born and then for hundreds of days you cannot touch them. That would suck so much.
Yeah. I didn't think my whole heart would, like, crack open when I had this kid. And it's a feeling I can't describe. You'd lose so much brain juice.
Just blow through it, baby. You just gotta just stop worrying about it.
Oh man, so much brain juice is gone. It being, I don't feel like a mom yet. I feel like a caregiver of like a hamster. As he gets older, it like gets better.
Caregiver of a hamster, she says. Caregiver of a hamster.
Because for the first month, he really doesn't do much, you know?
I mean, he is a poop tube, as they say.
Yeah. But now that he's like opening his eyes and is smiling all the time.
Smiling. Oh boy.
And he's got like a bit of a personality, and we're able to like, I'm like, oh, that's not a hungry cry, that's a tired cry. Like, we're able to understand him more.
Yeah.
It just gets a lot better. But the first month is shite. And, you know, the fact that they, in America, don't have required maternity leave is bullshit.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about parental leave for me right now.
But I'm just saying, like, some people get maybe 2 weeks, some people don't get any. Your aunt was saying that she went back after a couple of days. Like, I was not a human for the first month, I would say. Maybe 3 weeks, because 3 weeks, he was born exactly 3 weeks before my birthday. And so I think on my birthday, I finally felt a little bit more normal. But still, like, my body wasn't back to normal. I was still, you know, you can't use toilet paper. You're like...
Bidets, everyone.
Yeah. Nick is the best and installed bidets in our house, which is fantastic, but...
And I feel like at this point, I'm more grateful of them than you are, but that's neither here nor there.
Because you're big poops.
Yep, that happens.
But yeah, it's... If I have advice, I wish I didn't stress as much in the months leading up to it, because I think the anxiety made my pregnancy worse, because I also were finding out I was scared that things weren't going to go right, and so I didn't do a lot of future planning because I didn't want to jinx it.
Yeah, like and for example, us having issues now, we should have... Most people, apparently, plan for their childcare and their, like, daycare like before the kid's born.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that.
We didn't do that. So we're on a bunch of wait lists. But, yeah, I think also remembering that women are truly the badassest. Like, we can do anything. Mm-hmm. I had, again, a pretty easy birth. Things went pretty smoothly. It hurt really bad afterwards, but a lot of women do have to go through a lot worse and still come out on the other side as badass.
Yeah.
And just, like, unbelievable the things that they can do.
Agreed.
And they tell you, like, when I wasn't supposed to lift more than 10 pounds for, like, 6 weeks. My baby was 10 pounds before 6 weeks. So, you know, it's just wild all the things that women can just do. We can just do it. We figure it out. Like, I'm keeping this child alive from myself.
That's true. You are literally his only source of sustenance.
Yes.
Which is impressive in itself.
Advice is just move your body. If you're not a big workout person, I think working out before giving birth saved me. And also maybe just yoga. The fact that, like, yoga isn't necessarily always hard, but it forces you to be connected to your body. And I think in that moment, I was connected to my body because there was nothing else, you know? I couldn't deal with anything else on the outside. And so being able to just be like, I've done hard things, I can do hard things, and I'm going to continue to do hard things. And I will say, now when I teach my workout classes or I take workout classes, I realize, I'm like, man, this 25 push-ups is really hard, but I've done harder. And I'm going to have to keep reminding myself that, like, I've done the hardest thing that I think any human can do. And 50% of the population can do it. And a lot of them do. Multiple times.
Yeah, and choose to. And yeah, with the exercise thing, because, like, the advice we got was keep doing what you were doing before you were pregnant. So I would advise anyone who's thinking they want to get pregnant, start trying to establish a working workout routine, like something that works for you, workout routine now, basically. And then if you are pregnant, just got pregnant with, like, whatever it is, like, just keep doing what you're doing. Like, if that is just walking occasionally, like, do that. Yep. Don't stop doing that. Don't, unless, like, a doctor, we are not giving medical advice. I'm not a medical professional. Listen to your doctor. But yeah, like, I mean, I think just, you know, going out there and doing some kind of movement, motion, whatever it is that you've been doing before, keep doing it. We definitely had, not from our doctor, advice from a lot of people that were sort of like, oh, well, you shouldn't be doing that, or you got yelled at, like, early on when you were pregnant.
Don't do jumping jacks.
Lifting something.
Don't lift weights. Yeah.
Like, all this stuff. And no, if that's what you were doing before, that's what you should keep doing. And I do think that's what helped a lot. So. And
the other thing is, I bought myself a Peloton tread. We're not sponsored by Peloton, but if we were...
Boy, I'd love to be.
But I walked a lot when I was, like, 39 weeks pregnant, and I walked as much as I could after I gave birth too, and, like, I think that really, really helped me just get back into it, to just move your body. Like, movement is medicine. Sorry, this is not a health podcast, but for me, that physical health is linked to mental health. And so when I couldn't move my body, I was not well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, with that, should we go ahead and head towards the other end of things?
Yeah, I do want to say one thing that sucks about having a kid right now, specifically my child.
Oh, dear.
My child is allergic.
I knew where this is going.
To dairy and apparently soy. I don't know. So I can eat meat, peanut butter, oats. End of list.
Yeah, like you are someone who has always enjoyed cheese, which most people do.
It's charcuterie season.
You also
it's
don't
ice cream season.
Love meat. You like a lot of soy-based or vegetable-based things that have soy, and then the number of things that you wouldn't anticipate that have either soy or milk in it, or both.
Yeah, like the other day I was like, ooh, I want those hint of lime Tostino chips. I look on the back, contains milk. Why? They're tortilla chips. So anyways, that's just a personal thing. Hayden is, the things that mothers do for their children are a lot. And I know I was looking forward for like 9 months to having sushi. I can't freaking wait to go ham on an ice cream sundae.
I just realized I don't think we actually introduced his name or him. I mean, we're not going to introduce him by any means because we want to keep like him to have his own life. If he wants to have his own life, we're not choosing to put him on the internet before he wants to. But you have said his name, so his name is Hayden. Hayden, and in fact, why is he named Hayden? Other than it's a pretty name that you like. Why did I okay Hayden?
Why did you approve of it? Well, tangentially, we had to have like a nerd-ish name. I don't know if y'all know this. If this is your first time listening to this podcast, we're a Star Wars family. So Hayden is Hayden Christensen, who, eventually becomes Darth Vader. I mean, he doesn't, but like he's Anakin.
Anyway, so we will go ahead and
wait, Nick, should I ask you what was your hardest part of me giving birth and having the kid and having to deal with him and all that stuff?
Through every step, both through like your labor process and bringing him home and all sorts of other things, the most difficult thing has been the things that I cannot help with. It is the fact that through most of it, there's a lot of things that there is nothing I personally can do to make it easier for you. There is nothing I personally can do to take over that job for you. We before he was born, we talked about this a little bit too. Before he was born, we were sort of like, whatever, if he needs formula, no big deal. For whatever reason, a flip has switched for you, where literally from the moment he came out of you, you were like, I will breastfeed and no one else will have anything to do with it. That has been difficult for me, especially to adjust to, mostly just because it's like, it means I can't breastfeed. Just like, I cannot do that.
Yep.
We've gotten him to the point where bottles, so now, especially like we said, tomorrow you're going back to work. We've got enough saved up and everything, and I'll be feeding him that way. But like, even that still relies on you, and even that took you some time to kind of get okay with, because there was a while there where you were like, he will feed from me directly and no other path. And that's like, that was hard for me, because then whenever there was something that I thought maybe I could help you correct, or something I was trying to be helpful about the breastfeeding, or me trying to sort of be like, do we really need to breastfeed? We said we weren't going to. Like, all of those things were hard, and I was pushing it, and it caused fights sometimes, mostly because, like, for me, it was all coming from a place of, I cannot help. I cannot do this. I cannot breastfeed him. I cannot do any of that. And then the same thing with labor. Like, there's nothing I can do to make that job easier for you. Or, when he's crying and there's like nothing that we seem to be able to figure out what that is. And luckily we haven't had too much of that, but the times where it has been the worst experience for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be what the big things are, is just like any time that we encounter that I cannot help, there's nothing I can do.
And what's the best thing? This is the longest pause.
No, it's because there's so many good things. I mean, like, at this point, I think I would say 11 weeks in, his smile. But his smile didn't come until 2 or 3 weeks ago. So, like, I guess broadly, and this is going to sound corny, but no surprise, we're on a love podcast. We love each other a lot. Having you as a partner. The best part has been watching you develop and grow, and watching you become the mother that I knew you could be. And through all of that, you being a partner to me also. Like, when there's time, when I'm struggling with not being able to do things, you helping me figure that out, or, you just trying to include me and being happy to have me a part of his life, and not that I ever expected to be, but yeah, it being a us partnership once he was out of you. Aside from the breastfeeding. You're welcome to have me be a part of everything else, and I'm very grateful for that. So.
Oh, I love you.
I love you.
Sorry, we're gross.
All right, well, with that, we should go to the other side of things. And as a quick little reminder, Danielle, what movie we're going to be watching?
X-Men. Is it just called X-Men?
It is called X-Men.
X-Men.
X-Men 2000s. And to everyone else, remember, we do want to have some other segment at this point. We haven't figured out what it's going to be. We also always want love notes, so we want some sort of segment that could plug in for if we've got guests. By all means, shoot us an email if you've got ideas. That's the letter N, lovewithmovies, all at gmail.com. And if you send that to us, inlovewithmovies@gmail.com, just send us ideas. We haven't really had any ideas for what other segments could be, so as long as it's a segment we could do, you have a really, really high probability of us choosing it. Yeah. So if you want to have a direct influence over a podcast that you listen to, send us an email, inlovewithmovies@gmail.com. Similarly, I have not checked for love notes this time, but remember to always give on Spotify and or Apple Podcasts your 5-star review. If you write anything along with that 5-star review, literally anything written with that 5-star review, I will read it here on the air for us. So if you want to plug your own podcast, you want to rate us 5 stars and then talk about how much you think we're shitty and bad at podcasting or the worst parents ever because we're having our kid on television, recording on YouTube, any of the above. All right. You let us know and just go ahead and rate us with 5 stars to be able to get that. So with that, we will see you all on the other side.
Peace. In love with movies. Da-da-da.
And we're back. Welcome back, movie lovers. And hey, we did this part right this time.
Woohoo!
Yay! So this is the movie portion of the podcast where we're going to be talking about X-Men from the year 2000. In the year 2000. In the year 2000.
What song is that?
It's a Conan bit. I thought you were a Conan fan.
Oh.
It's an old Conan bit.
I was thinking of, 'cause I've been to the year 3000.
Okay, now you're making stuff up. Anyway, so opening credits for the movie X-Men, again, released in the year 2000. We've got a director and was also given writing credit, Bryan Singer. Scandal noted, but Bryan Singer has done a fair number of things that I actually enjoy his work on. Other writers included Tom DeSanto, who is most notable apparently for being producer on a lot of Transformers movies, doesn't have a ton of writing credits. And then also David Hayter. Now, David Hayter was notable to me, A, because he wrote a lot of other X-Men, as I learned, but B, and I immediately recognized his name, and I was like, there's no way this is the same David Hayter. But it turns out it is. Anybody who played the Metal Gear Solid video games, David Hayter voices Solid Snake, the main protagonist in those movies.
His name is Solid Snake. What a dumb name. Keep going.
Gottmik is a dumb name. Like, let me just go ahead and crap on something you like.
You better take that back.
I do take that back, because I'm not a mean person like you. I know you love the thing. Gottmik is a perfectly fine name, just like Solid Snake is a perfectly fine name for a video game protagonist in a fictional world.
We're fighting.
All right. Acting-wise, this movie is star-studded.
It truly is.
Like, it is cram-packed full of people that some of them are were already actors at the time, and then others who have become huge actors since and only partially were made that way because of this. So
I heard Hugh Jackman. Huge actors.
Well, Hugh Jackman was, in fact, one of those names that I was going to give. So Hugh Jackman, it's hard to believe, but he actually was not as big of a name at this time. He'd only done a couple of American movies, and lots of people were critical and did not think he was a good choice because Wolverine, the character, is supposed to be quite short, and Hugh Jackman is, I don't know, something close to 6 foot. So, So, anyway, him, Patrick Stewart,
obviously.
which, I feel like I'm not even going to list as many of these people's other credits because, the name itself is a credit.
Yeah.
Patrick Stewart, Sir Ian McKellen, which is the one that you were like, where do I know him from? Gandalf. That's Gandalf.
Oh, yeah. I was like, his voice sounds familiar. Wait, is Gandalf Lord of the Rings?
Oh, my God.
Is
yes.
it? Okay.
Yes, and there are people screaming at you through their headphones right now.
He died.
What? I don't think so. You look that up and confirm for me. I'm 90%
I'm thinking of Dumbledore.
Certain.
Keep going.
Wowzer. You are just putting us off on all kinds of unnecessary tangents right now. Anyway, we got a long list of names to get through, by the way.
Go.
Femke Jensen. That's the name you were like, I don't recognize her. She was kind of in a lot of things around this time. She plays Jean Grey, and has kind of seemingly fallen off. I'm not entirely sure, but she's been in a lot of things. I remember her being in other X-Men movies, the movie I Spy, a lot of other sort of comedies and or action films around the turn of the century. Anna Paquin. Anna Paquin's been in a ton of stuff, including True Blood and some other notable movies and things of that nature. Let's see. We've got James Marsden.
Obviously, that's the one I recognize.
You love James Marsden.
I saw his cheekbones. I said, "That's my boy James."
From 30 Rock fame and also being in others, so the Superman Returns movie and Sex Drive, lots of cool stuff.
Enchanted.
Oh yeah,
one of the best movies ever.
Anyway, Halle Berry, who Halle Berry was very much a household name already. I think this might have been
her last work.
No, that's not nice. I think this may have been pre-Monsters Ball, so it was probably before she won an Oscar, but it was after she'd already been a household name. Rebecca Romijn. Formerly Rebecca Romijn Stamos, so you may have known her as... Oh. Yeah, that was Mystique. She also is now on Star Trek Strange New Worlds, so... Does she
model?
I think she was, yes. I'm pretty sure.
Because guess how many lines she had in this movie?
I mean, like 4?
0. No, she didn't talk the whole time.
That's not true. That's not true. People like you are the reason I was afraid to go to school as a child. That is one of her lines. It's a pretty big one.
But as a different actor?
No.
Oh, okay. All right, keep going.
Anyway. Ray Park. What was Ray Park famous for that you were like, oh my God?
Darth Maul.
That's right.
Yeah.
The guy who played Darth Maul. And you can kind of see that at different moments because he's very much like a stuntman turned actor. Also scandal noted, apparently. Bruce Davison. Bruce Davison is a name that I would not know and do not know. But he has been in a ton of stuff. He plays Senator Dickhead, or whatever that senator's name was. And he's just been in a boatload of movies. He's very much sort of a journeyman and a character actor. So
cool.
He was the only other one I thought was worthy, but that is still, you got to go that far down before you find someone that's not like a, knock out of the park. So
yeah, that was a lot of people. Wait,
that is all the names.
Who plays Magneto?
Ian McKellen. We had a whole conversation about him.
This is so hard for me to understand.
Brain not work. So anyway, before we go further into our conversations about this, we're going to watch Danny's brain not work further in...
Time for Danny's Dingle.
Oh, gosh. Poland, 1944. Then, the distant future? A kiss. A killer kiss. Ooh, runaway. A boxer with metal inside. Then magnets. Then a caveman. Then a school. A school for gifted youngsters. Friends. Superheroes. Super suits. Politics. The anti-inclusion. What's the word? Exclusion. Fighty bow pow. I don't really remember the end. And see you next time.
That's true. They did kind of clearly set it up for a sequel.
That was not a bad Danny's Dingle.
Not bad. No, that was pretty good. That was pretty decent.
Yeah, because
you did okay.
The movie was pretty...
You did okay. It was pretty what? Is that like you saying good things, bad things?
It's just... Yep.
Okay. Well, Danielle, again, has alluded to she has lots of thoughts about this movie, and she was taking tons of notes.
I was.
So I'm very curious to see how this conversation continues. One thing I will note about your Danny's Dingle is it doesn't say in the distant future. It says in the not too distant future specifically. And the reason I noted that is because I was like, yeah, right. It's going to be obvious that this is, in the past. And it actually wasn't. The one and only thing I thought maybe shows it, because they were careful not to show like using old rotary phones or other things like computers that seem really dated. There was lots of not things that would date it. Mm-hmm. The one thing is, I do think when Rogue ran away, instead of having to use Cerebral, they would probably have been like, does she have a cell phone? There would have at least been a comment on like, can we LoJack her or track her, using, our hacker capabilities or something like that, our technological prowess. Except there could have been a line about like, oh, she doesn't have a cell phone, she doesn't carry one or something, and that would have taken care of that. But anyway, that's the one and only thing that I think could have dated the movie. Otherwise, did a pretty good job. Is he okay? What are you looking?
Is he breathing? Okay, we're good. I was getting nervous that he's gonna stop breathing.
Anyway, so that is your Danny's Dingle. Now, what is your love story with this movie?
I watched it last night, two nights ago.
Now,
I don't remember.
You're correct. We watched it very recently. Now, what is your love story with the X-Men characters in movies, and why, therefore, are we choosing this movie now?
I don't know the answer to this. I guess I know I know them.
Okay, Hugh Jackman Wolverine
Yeah.
is going to be in a movie soon.
Called Deadpool.
Uh-huh.
I know that.
So what's your history with the mutant universe, the Fox mutant universe?
I guess I've seen the Deadpools.
There you go. Okay. That's all I was trying to get you to say.
Here's
It
the
is
thing.
the reason we're watching this, because Hugh Jackman will appear as Wolverine in a movie this month.
X-Men have broken into the zeitgeist so much that, like,
You were familiar with him
I
to
know
begin
all
with.
the characters. I was
Okay.
like, oh, I know him. Even though I didn't realize that Magneto was a magnet, I still knew the name Magneto.
To this day, I think to myself, I was thinking about this last night when we were watching it. I wonder if it was like intended to just be Magneto, magnet, when it was like, because think about
Do
it,
you
it was in
spell it with an
comics.
E?
Yeah, I mean it's spelt like magnet O,
Oh.
and so I thought to myself like,
Magnet.
I wonder if
Oh.
when they first wrote it, they were thinking magnet O, and then someone somewhere when it was first put to script said it out loud as Magneto, which I think sounds better personally. But
It does. In my head, he's like a lava guy. I don't know why.
like when you knew of him before, is what you're saying? You thought he was a lava guy?
The name Magneto is lava. to
Okay,
me.
well it's not, but maybe you thought magna. I don't know.
But I also always knew that Halle Berry was Storm. I don't know why.
Okay.
I guess just like growing up in the
You probably
90s,
had your
early
brother and
2000s,
others,
yeah.
were talking about it, or friends, or everything like that.
yeah,
Saw glimpses.
yeah.
So my history, my love story with this movie, in addition to making you watch Deadpool with us, and it was one of our earlier dates, it was one on our first year. I think it was maybe our first Valentine's Day date. Was we went for that love story of a movie, and it was in fact a love story. I really liked that.
Deadpool's great.
Holds up. So we'll be curious to see how the rest of it goes. But for this movie, I'm sure I saw it in theaters. I remember going to the third one dressed as Colossus, who you've not seen yet. But I mean, I wrapped myself in tinfoil and went there with my friends.
He's in Deadpool.
Oh, he is in Deadpool. I forgot about that. He's not in the X-Men. Anyway, he's not in the movies that you've seen for like X-Men proper, but you've seen him in Colossus, that same guy from Deadpool. Yep. So wrapped myself in tinfoil and was excited for that for the third one. Embarrassed the heck crap out of my friends who were also there as other X-Men. So
Do you have pictures of this?
I don't think so. You have to remember this is back before like everybody had a ubiquitous camera on their phones. So but then this movie itself, I also was the first DVD we ever owned as a family. Like when we got a DVD player in, I don't know, 2001 or something like that, we got this movie was amongst the first ones. Like, we bought 2 or 3 and this was one of them. So I watched the crap out of this movie.
Ah.
Yeah. So that is my love story with this movie.
Yeah, and we're watching it because Nick was like, "Oh, you haven't seen these? Now you must see him to see the backstory of Wolverine." But
Yeah.
isn't there another movie called Logan that's also the backstory of Wolverine?
Logan is not the backstory. Logan is actually a like far-flung future story.
Oh, I don't care about it then.
And from what I gather, I don't think that technically speaking, with the whole multiverse of it all, that the Wolverine in Deadpool is going to be the same Wolverine that you have just now seen on screen.
But isn't it Hugh Jackman?
It is.
My head.
Well,
I
do you
can't
remember
deal
the
with this.
Multiverse of Madness?
I
And
can't.
Doctor Strange had a lot of people played by Benedict Cumberbatch, but they were all different Doctor Stranges from different multiverses.
Okay, here's a hot take. Stop the multiverse. Stop it.
I
You
don't
guys
think you're the
can
first
do-
one with this hot take, actually.
You feel like you can do whatever you want now because you're like, oh, it's a multiverse. You're ruining all the stories.
Yeah, that's the worst part. Is like
And it's
multiverse
confusing.
is a one cool way to do some cool stories, and instead, they're just like doing whatever the hell they want
Yeah.
instead. Like, but anyway,
Boo.
neither here nor there. So, going to talk about this movie though, going back to it, you mentioned flash forward and Poland. I think I wrote down that the sort of initial Patrick Stewart voiceover followed by the World War II and Rogue sequences, which those being back to back are an intentional juxtaposition of like those two characters who are obviously sort of intertwined, and so you see their powers coming on each of their stories, because this movie is a story about Magneto and a story about Rogue specifically. And then the Senate hearing, which in my mind includes the like really brilliant dialogue between Magneto and Patrick Stewart, Professor
His
X.
name's Eric.
Eric Lenscher, yep. And he keeps calling him Eric, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And like the fact that like you get some of their backstory, you clearly understand that they must have known each other, they have history together, and they just have this really good, and it's just two actors just fucking crushing it, in my opinion, because they're both gorgeous and amazing as actors. They're gorgeous actors.
They're gorgeous.
Great at what they do.
I don't think they're gorgeous physically, but can I say, as a first-time person watching this, there was no superhero-y stuff or backstory stuff up until that point that you're talking about. I'm just like, oh, this is a mystery movie because I don't know anything.
What do you mean that there's no superhero-y stuff? Because he pulls magnet, like the fence. That's superhero-y stuff.
Well, I didn't understand what was happening.
Okay. Well, that I think actually articulates the point I was trying to make with me getting into all of this stuff of being an opening. I literally wrote down, this is the best opening to any superhero movie, and I think to date. Like, I think it still holds up as the best setup for, because exactly, you're like, what's going on? Yeah. It makes you interested. It makes you intrigued. You want to know the answers to these things. It causes you to then pay attention to what these characters' stories are. You're trying to figure out who's who. But at the same time, then, as somebody who does know some of the characters, does know that Magneto has magnet powers and, you know, knows that Rogue sucks people's, powers away from them. Because I'm pretty sure her like backstory in the comics is very similar to that. Her backstory in the animated series, I know, is pretty similar to that. So it's very cool, and I think it does a fantastic job of setting the stage, setting up the players, introducing you to who you need to know, giving enough backstory, but also giving you like reason to still be curious. It was just very, very well done, and I think is very well executed.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, I was super intrigued. I didn't look at my phone this whole movie, which means I was intrigued. Like you said, I was taking a lot of notes because I kept saying in my head, I was like, what's happening? Why did this girl kiss this guy and then he had a seizure or whatever? And then it's just something that, again, going back to the multiverse and new Marvel movies and all this, like, they don't have that magic of just like setting up characters. There was nothing like big, flashy. Like, think about the most recent Doctor Strange. The entire thing was freaking CG because they want like mushrooms and pink on the background of the screen. Yeah. This was like, here's a character. And like, it's heartbreaking now that I have a son to see this son ripped away from his mom. And I was like, I don't know what's happening. And then it's also heartbreaking, again, this other son is like dying because that girl was there. And you just like don't know what's happening. It is very intriguing, and it pulls you in to be like, what's going on? And then it flashes to Wolverine. And I know Wolverine because everyone knows Wolverine. He's just a thing in his hair, you know? Yeah, they did a good job with his hair articulating that that's the character he was. They did a fantastic job with his hair. But I didn't know he was a fighter or boxer, I guess. Well, I don't know how much that is actually the case. I mean, the whole bare knuckle boxing or, you know, sort of the backwoods of Canada, like that part makes sense for his story, that he's always sort of like off the grid type of stuff, you know, a nothing bar, and he would do basically anything to make enough money to keep going. But, you know, and I don't specifically remember that. Maybe there is a thing in the comics, but I mean, it just makes a lot of sense with his backstory of him being that rough and tumble, gruff kind of guy, and he obviously would know that he could go do that and keep winning because he could just take a beating and be okay. Yeah, and I didn't know any of that about Wolverine. All I knew was... You didn't know his heel factor? No. Oh. I only knew his claws. Okay. And so when he was boxing, at first I thought he had, like, his claws were secretly coming out, but I was like, oh, these guys are not dying. They're not being, like, you know, cut in half. Yeah, so his claws are not coming out. I had no idea he was all metal either. Yep. And I was going to say, and I think the only thing that was happening, that he was probably hitting harder than a lot of them, because you occasionally, like when he punches that guy the first time, you hear that clang, and I think that's supposed to be like it showing like, you know, his skeleton is hitting hard. Yeah, and in my head it was just like he was just stab. I remember thinking that or wondering if that's what he was doing, I think the first time I saw it, but yeah, then you catch on the clang. I will say, the choreography of future fight scenes is okay in this movie. That first one was bad. Like, that is the one thing that did not hold up. Like, those punches were so far away from connecting. Yeah. Obviously so. So did Rogue just randomly find him and then was like, oh, a mutant like me, and then followed him? Yep, exactly. All of the above. She was just also on the run trying to find anywhere, and then saw someone who she realized was a mutant and then thought, well, this guy's a tough, rough and tumble mutant. Maybe he'll protect me. And I think also probably, like, maybe wanted protection, maybe wanted company, and then also because of knowing her powers, like, wasn't necessarily afraid of him. Like, she knew that, you know, if he was not a good guy or something, or was gonna actually hurt or attack her, she could have just taken her gloves off and won. So, but Wolverine is a secret softie, because he was like, I promise I will take care of you. He, like, becomes her dad figure. Which is a recurring thing for him in the comics. I do know that. For everyone or just for Rogue? I think this movie may have been the first time it happened with Rogue, and then they kind of made the comics make sense for that. From what my understanding is, and don't quote me on this, others can correct me,
But he did it kind of like with Kitty Pryde, who's another character that you've not necessarily met, but is in the movies later. And some others. Like, it's just Jubilee is kind of who he does it with in the animated series, and Jubilee was a character only for the animated series. Well, yeah, but like like you said, a big brother or a father figure. Like, it's never... In fact, I think I guess it makes some sense with Rogue. Like, Rogue seems to be pining for him a little bit in a romantic sense, but he never gives any kind of indication that he has that sort of a relationship with her from his perspective. Like, his feelings are not that.
He loves Jean Grey.
Yeah, he's got hots for Jean Grey.
I have a question.
Okay.
Isn't a Wolverine like a badger thing?
Yeah, kind of.
But why? He's like a dog. I don't... I don't understand why he's called Wolverine.
Well, so keep in mind that he's like, again, in the comics, a very stout, short person. Wolverine is kind of like short to the ground. Wolverines are also famous for being like really, really vicious and mean. And like, Wolverines are, again, they look kind of like a big badger, but they have been known to like take on grizzly bears. I'm pretty sure I'm not kidding. I don't think I'm making that up. I've heard stories like that. That's how mean and vicious they are, that like the biggest, meanest of other things will mess with a Wolverine, and the Wolverine will make them regret it.
So also in this universe, it kind of seems like this is Marvel Light, whatever you call it. Not the MCU, but
Sure.
It's part of Marvel.
It's all MCU now that there's a multiverse, and Fox is owned by Disney.
Again, another freaking
anyway,
excuse
continue.
to use the multiverse. It seems like X-Men and mutants choose their own names, whereas other superheroes, it's kind of just assumed that that's their name. They choose the name, except for Deadpool. Deadpool's a mutant, right? Kinda, sorta.
And he kind of chooses. Yeah, he qualifies as a mutant. Is
Some of them
specifically what he's supposed to be.
Are like, I make storms, therefore I am Storm. I have a long tongue, therefore I am Toad.
So are you saying they're lazy with their naming, or are you saying you're complimenting because they name themselves?
No, they're dumb. Like, Magneto is a magnet. I don't know. But Rogue. I don't know. It's interesting she chose Rogue because I guess she goes rogue.
She goes on the rogue, yeah. She goes rogue.
Goes on the rogue.
Goes on the run, goes rogue.
I feel bad for her, though. She has the worst mutation of them all.
Yeah.
Because she can never be touched. Except for when she wears, apparently, just clothes.
Well, I mean, it's skin-to-skin contact, clearly.
Yeah,
but that's like, I mean, you and I both talk about this, like, that we've talked on this podcast before. My love language is physical touch. Now, imagine if that's her love language. She will be able to never, for the rest of her life, touch another human being. Like, and not even, like, sex, just, which also is a problem, but literally holding hands. Yeah. She cannot do that.
Yeah, it's sad.
It's really sad. It gives you, I think it's a really great, and I was just watching this episode of the animated series, which is also kind of reflected in the third X-Men movie of this particular franchise. There eventually becomes somebody who's selling essentially a cure, quote unquote, for your mutanthood. And Rogue's storyline is that she gives very serious consideration and in fact like kind of heads over to try to get the cure before she changes her mind. And it's for exactly this reason. Like, maybe me having powers isn't worth the fact that I don't ever get to touch another person ever. Period.
Interesting. Kind of reminds me of, well, you've never seen this, but Wicked.
Sure.
She goes to see the wizard so that she can become not green anymore.
There you go.
Spoiler alert.
I mean,
she stays green. So the movie goes on in, this is what I wrote. Lots of exposition with names. When they're meeting everyone,
sure.
Like, this is Cyclops. This is...
But I love that the writers, like, also point that out.
Yeah.
Because you've got Wolverine that goes, oh yeah, what do they call you? Wheels. Like, this is ridiculous, everyone. Come on. We all know this is ridiculous, right?
But then also it was very helpful for me.
Correct.
Because sometimes they don't say names in these movies, and I'm like, oh, this guy. And then I didn't realize this was a political movie.
Very much so. X-Men has always been political. It was written originally kind of like with essentially race, and because it was written in the 60s, you know what I mean? And the idea of being different. But now, I mean, because we've obviously been watching We're Here and other things talking about queerness, and I just was like, oh my God, just the things that they say, you know, like, imagine being persecuted for just who you are. And it's like,
Yeah.
Imagine wanting people to tell you that you can't be out in public, or you should register so that we can track you.
Yeah. No,
yeah.
It made me obviously think a lot of a little Trumpy boy. and how he's like, we need to, not allow people into our country and not like allow for diversity. And he's very clearly a bad racist man, and he's anti-queer. And also made me think about people with disabilities and being like, oh, you're different? Register yourself. Let's call you out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just so messed up.
Mm-hmm.
So truly, I'm learning so much from watching this movie because I didn't know that was like the whole...
It is literally its whole thing.
The
And it's very funny
motivation.
to me because there's also been some backlash recently where people are like whether it's the movies or whether it's the comics themselves, they're like, man, keep your politics out of my comics. It's like, guys, politics has been central to this, especially comic and many others, literally since its inception.
Like Captain America? Wasn't it like...
It was,
anti-war?
He was very America and sort of jingoistic almost and like punching Nazis in the face. But even that's political when you think about it. You know what I mean? It's just a political stance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, it's very funny to me when people say, keep your politics out of my art. I'm like, guys, look at literally the breadth of history.
But it's also, I mean, the message is just like, why would you get rid of people who can do incredible things and like, you're so anti-difference.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. So I like that. The other thing I was thinking is that's the reason that Magneto is bad. Because he doesn't like that people are anti-mutant, right? So he's like, instead I'm going to turn everyone into mutants.
Yeah. I mean, that's the storyline for this, is that I will turn everyone into mutants.
I will say, again, I know this is like, I said, it's very basic, but it's like, I like that. I understand the villain's motivation from the get-go.
Yeah, well, they keep the sort of key points pretty straightforward. Like,
yeah.
But they have a compelling story that is the straightforward thing. They don't muddle it with a bunch of other extra gobbledygook. They stick to what's necessary, and then they allow for character development. Yeah, the analogy that is often, and I don't know for sure if it's ever been quoted, that Ditko and Stan Lee, who I think both were the ones credited for creating, maybe it's... There might be someone else for X-Men. Again, apologies. Not that deep of a comic book person that I know all these things. Somebody please happily correct me. Anyway, when they were first created, I don't know if this has ever been stated as intentional, but others very quickly started making the comparisons between Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. Because Professor X, being Martin Luther King Jr., sort of saying, peace, we should work with people, let's, get everyone to understand that it's important that we should all live together in harmony. And then you've got Malcolm X, who for a very long time was like, let's kill everyone, or they're using violence against us, let's use violence back. And that's obviously very much Magneto's position, is like, oh, you think you want to come after my people? Let me show you what we can do.
It's
So.
interesting, Malcolm X is not Professor X. It's the opposite. But, yeah, that is interesting. So then the politician guy, I also like that kind of early on in the movie, the Trumpy boy gets what he deserves. I feel bad for him eventually, but like his cells are falling apart.
Yeah. I mean, he didn't deserve to die, but certainly having something that caused him to have to understand. And I mean, this is the thing, is it's like, do you have someone who's a mutant that you love? We've talked about that before, having someone you love. Or, God forbid, like if someone could snap a finger and make you queer somehow, and like that you then had to just understand that and couldn't fight it, like that would be what essentially Magneto was trying to do. Like, make all of the world leaders be the thing that they hate and fear, so that they then have to just kind of deal with that.
Mm-hmm. He just didn't do it correctly. That's
Obviously.
why he needed Rogue, right?
Powers. He did need her powers, although I think the idea that the movie is trying to put forth is that even if she had done it, it would have killed everyone the same way as it killed the senator. Mm-hmm. It's that there was a problem with whatever this machine was, which they do not... This is, again, you don't even think about it, because I think they're telling a good story, they're moving it at a good clip, they're making you care about the characters. There's no real explanation as to how Magneto's powers power a machine that then sends out this wave that turns people into mutants. Like, there is zero exposition on how that machine works.
But then also, how does he get inside Professor X's machine and put him in a coma? They don't really explain that either. Just like, oh, conveniently, Professor X gets knocked out.
No, that was shown.
How?
When you had Bobby, the guy who's Frost, Iceman. I'm forgetting the character's name. Iceman was being impersonated by Mystique. Mystique, who changes shapes.
Who's Iceman?
Is the kid who's also got a crush on Rogue. The kid at school.
Oh, yes.
Remember
yes,
when
yes,
then
yes.
she's on the train with Wolverine and she goes, well, I heard Professor was mad at me. And he
Yeah,
goes,
yeah,
who told
yeah.
you that? And she said, a boy at school.
Yeah.
Well, the boy at school wasn't really the boy at school.
Well, I
it
got
was,
that.
well, and they showed her. Remember, you commented on her, like, switching her face to be able to get into Cerebro. And then she goes into Cerebro and she plugs in some kind of thing that causes, like, black liquid to go through it.
I forgot that part.
Yeah, it's okay.
I thought they used a Mystique being apparently Iceman. I don't know that guy. They did a good job of like getting Rogue to go away.
Sure. Yep.
I mean, Mystique is a very convenient character, but she does a lot of. I said she's a pretty badass.
Oh yeah, Mystique is badass in the comics. She's badass in this movie.
But she doesn't talk. She really barely speaks in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, for whether it's fair or not, I'm sure that was because they were like, well, it's Rebecca Romijn, who's, I think, again, more of a model than an actress. Although I don't know what her acting capability was like at the time of this movie. I love her in Star Trek Strange New Worlds. So I don't know what the hell somebody was thinking in terms of she can't act if that was the case. So
I wrote down this line. I thought it was pretty good. Mankind has always feared what it doesn't understand.
Mm-hmm.
That's just another, like, hitting hard of the message of, like...
It's just a truism. You know what I mean? Like, it's like a fact.
We talk about this a lot because we watch a lot of older movies. Like, this was made in 2000. We are almost 25 years later. You'd think things would get better.
I mean...
It's gotten worse.
In some ways it has, but in others it has gotten better. I mean, the sort of... I like looking at things the way that President Obama had. You know, if you look at the long arc of history, it's progression. It's just that it's not as fast as you would want it to be.
In love with movies. Da-da-da.
Through the magic of podcasting, we are back once again. Sorry for the rough edit, everyone, and sorry if the audio quality is not quite as good since we need to leave the door open to our recording studio now.
Our cat just got out.
Again.
Literally. Oh, my God. The neighbor was just like, hey, man, your cat's on the fence.
Yeah, luckily we have very friendly neighbors who happen to also be outside and called enough times to get through the do not disturb on my phone, and I'm like, there is... no good reason why Craig would be calling me instead of texting me. So, sure enough, it was, hey man, just letting you know your cat's, yep. And the best part about this is, everyone, because the cat has dug his way through our window screens before, I spent several hours today replacing all of our window screens, or two of the window screens rather, with thicker cat-approved proof window screens specifically designed for that. And he did not manage to dig his way through those new screens. However...
he pulled the window up. He opened the window. It's because there's birdies. He wants the birdies.
Just pulled on the screen and lifted it instead.
Stupid
Didn't have to
cat.
dig through. He'll just open the window. The silly son of a gun.
I said stupid cat, but he's very smart.
Very, very smart. Frighteningly so.
What was I saying? Something probably deep and philosophical.
Oh,
and
obviously.
then the cat ran away.
I genuinely don't remember at this point. I know that we were talking about Cerebro not long before that, and I will say that I think Cerebro is a cool visualization, how they choose to show that, and it kind of holds up still. Like, there was some CG in this, like his claws occasionally that, you know, looked like 2000 CG, although honestly, still look just as good as some of the stuff that's been made in the last 5 years because they are overclocking everyone who does CG these days in Hollywood. But the Cerebro thing I thought held up, and I thought was a cool way to sort of communicate what was happening for him.
Is Cerebro like the GPS? Where they were just like locating people?
Yeah. It basically, Cerebro in the comics just amplifies his not connect. Oh god.
Telekinesis.
Thank you. Telepathic.
Telepathy. All the above.
His telepath powers are sort of magnified by Cerebro, so he's able to sense everyone basically.
And Jean Grey.
Jean Grey
Is a doctor.
She is. Yep.
She fixes people, but she also has the same powers kind of Professor X.
Yes, so without getting too much into it, because it's not in this movie in particular, she is a very powerful mutant, actually, mostly telekinesis, but also with telepathic powers. And she has a whole storyline about Dark Phoenix, where basically the professor at different points has put mental blocks to try to protect her from her own powers, because she is so super powerful. And then Dark Phoenix is this storyline where a alien sentience of sorts comes and releases her powers, and she becomes like very, very powerful and becomes an antagonist to the X-Men. So
she doesn't have a superhero name.
That is correct. I want to say at some point they called her like Marvel Girl or Wonder Girl or something like that, but yeah, it seems like most of the time it ends up defaulting back to just Jean Grey. Which is really funny when you think about it, because, like, yeah, everyone has a code name to be able to, like, go out into the field and keep them safe, and then they're just like, Jean!
Dr. Jean Grey. It is very early 2000s, though, to be like, oh, she's the hot doctor, and of course she's got the hot boyfriend who says, stay away from my girl. But then Wolverine is also like, I want your girl. They can't just appreciate her for her intelligence. They have to be like, oh, she's also hot, and I want to date her. Because Logan, that's his name. At one point is like, I'm already, what do you say? I'm in love. I already have my sights on it. Whatever. He clearly comes on to her.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he's making all kinds of comments like, oh, you couldn't wait to get my shirt off another time.
Oh, yeah. Dumb.
No, that is very much 2000s, but for what it's worth in terms of, like, datedness, keep in mind, I now remember what we were talking about, very, like, the lessons in the movie and sort of, like, the themes, you know, for 25 years, we still have the same things that we're dealing with. What made me think about that now is, like, it's not 25 years. All of them are the same themes from the 60s. So we're talking 65 years. And it's still a problem. Yeah. And that is the one thing I was going to say is, like, it is sort of 2000 kind of a dated way that things are treated. But then even in the 1960s, like, very much would have been sort of not making powerful women that well fleshed out. I will also say that I don't know how much is in the comics, but it's definitely in the animated series, which is another, like, popular source for people that, you know, Jean and it's a love triangle. It is a love triangle that exists, and she at times, like, has genuine feelings for Wolverine and then all of that jazz. Like, if you've ever seen the meme where you've got, like, Wolverine animated looking at a picture of what is Jean Grey and Cyclops, and he's, like, looking all forlorn, or if you see the meme where, like, two people are making out in the background and you've got Wolverine kind of looking to camera basically in the foreground, and he kind of looks really sad, and the two people making out in the background are Jean Grey and Scott Summers. So
I mean,
it's an ongoing thing.
James Marsden's hot, but
he is.
Halle Berry, James Marsden, Mystique, Rebecca Romaine, they say 4 things each. Well, Mystique says less, I feel like.
Some of them get to have more to do in the future movies. I do wonder if, like, maybe some of it was pared down intentionally, and I don't know whether that was in the writing or whether that was in the editing later on, but I think that, like, they wanted to, and goes to, like, why I think the movie does still hold up, though, is they decided to really zoom in and focus on, like, Wolverine, Rogue, and Magneto, and, like, then to the degree that he needs to be a part of the story, you've also got Professor X, and so Professor X being a part of that as well, you've just they stayed to the core characters and really only focused on what was absolutely necessary for the story to be told. So that means that a lot of those other characters, because the comics really are very much an ensemble piece. There's a lot of people with very deep backstories, and you only have, you know, essentially 90-minute movie to communicate all of that.
Yeah, and that's why you said there's like 73 of these movies or something.
There's like 10 of them, and I say that, but I can't say that they did a successful job over all the rest of the movies, giving good backstories to those characters. I would say the first 2 are very good. There's some things worth being happy about with some of the Wolverine side movies, including the movie that's just called Wolverine, and the movie that's called X-Men Origins Wolverine, which is actually where he first encounters Deadpool and Ryan Reynolds, so we will go investigate that at some point. But
is he the main X-Men?
Wolverine? I mean, like, Hugh Jackman made him the main X-Man. He was a popular character to begin with, but I mean, in the movies, Hugh Jackman just crushed it in such a way that it became the vehicle for, like, oh, we're just gonna keep doing movies around him. So that is where I will say, like, both in the spin-offs, obviously, because his have been the only ones that got spin-offs, but also in terms of, like, there's sort of 3 core movies, these Bryan Singer's trilogy, where Wolverine is very much the central character of those 3 movies as well. But they do at least get more to do, other characters do, in the other movies.
Is he, because you only get, like, a very quick glimpse of his backstory. He doesn't remember anything.
Correct.
Jean Grey's got power, so she can kind of see things.
Sure, okay.
He's basically Captain America, though, because Captain America, they're like, we're going to make a super soldier, and then they did all these experiments, and then he became super soldier. This, I'm assuming he also wanted a super soldier, or they wanted a super soldier, they put all this metal in him.
You're correct about that, yes. So, like, the one part that's different is, like, sort of a big part of his powers were like already there. They, you know, I mean, his
did say
healing
that.
factor, all of that, you know.
That's why they chose him, because he could heal from it.
Correct. And that's what I was going to say is like,
Yeah.
he would have been specifically chosen for it for that reason. And in that sense, to some degree, yes. In terms of like being like Captain America, there is some storylines and you know, man out of time type of elements of things. That's very much true to the case. There have been versions of X-Men comics and other Marvel comics where the two of them have interacted back in World War II. It has been communicated that Logan, by that name, or James Howlett, lots of other names that he's gone by, you know, has been alive for literally hundreds of years and has fought in wars and therefore has interacted with other Marvel characters at different times.
Interesting. But this is not his movie. This is apparently Rogue's movie.
That is the main one. Yep.
I don't find her very compelling.
Yeah, she's Rogue is a much more animated, for lack of a better word, character in, I think, the comics and in the animated TV series, and she's kind of written kind of flat, and then Anna Paquin does kind of play her kind of flat. I like Anna Paquin. She does a fine job as an actress in other things that I've seen her in too, but I don't know that she kind of is always a little bit low level. She's not very high energy as an actress. So she does play some subtlety quite well, but Rogue is kind of a like vociferous, bombastic, out there, in your face kind of character, and that is not at all the Rogue that we get with played by Anna Paquin. So
yeah, I was like, meh. I did like the turn of, I thought Magneto was also trying to get Wolverine.
And you don't see that coming, right? Mm-hmm. I feel like it almost took me multiple times watching this movie, because the first time I would have seen it, I would have been much younger, 12 or 13. I feel like it almost took me multiple times watching this movie to be like, oh, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, they all come together. They do a stupid little nod to like, oh, you wear these suits? Would you rather have them be yellow?
Yep, the yellow spandex comment.
Mm-hmm. But other than that, the humor does not hit in this movie. James Marsden and Hugh Jackman are supposed to hate each other, and some of their side comments to each other, I'm like, this is dumb and not funny.
That's true. This sort of verbal sparring is not very comedic. It's not very, very strong.
Yeah. And they tried a couple other times to be humorous, and I'm like, meh.
I am looking forward to much better verbal sparring between Deadpool and Wolverine. Very
Agreed.
much so.
And they're real life friends, so I think that'll be a good
Agreed.
a good chemistry. And then, Magneto's got his little tongue boy.
Frog or Toad. Yeah, Toad.
Tongue boy and caveman.
Caveman. Sabretooth.
Fine. Cool.
So here, let me blow your mind with something. With the other spin-off movies, it is insinuated, I think maybe stated, I can't remember if it's explicit or only remains implicit, that Sabretooth, although played by a different actor in other movies, that Sabretooth is in fact Logan's half-brother.
Okay.
I wondered how that would play in your head. You're like, what?
Dumb. This is what I was going to say earlier. Halle Berry, with her 4 lines, two of them have different accents. 2 of the lines have one accent, then the other... I'm like, what is she doing with her voice?
Clearly, so...
Trying to be like Russian or something?
So the character is supposed to be like Egyptian.
Oh.
And Rogue is supposed to be deep Southern. Both Anna Paquin and Halle Berry in the future movies were clearly told, and correctly so, stop trying.
That was bad.
Don't even attempt it. You butchered it. You sounded terrible. That might be another reason why Halle Berry's performance is cut out of a lot of this movie, because it could have just been like, man, these are so bad, we can't even put these on camera. Like, we can't put these on the screen.
Her acting was really bad in this movie, to be honest.
Yeah.
But she looks cool.
Like, I don't know if it maybe is a choice, because she's obviously been in other things where she can act. Like, there's no question that Halle Berry as an actress has the capability. What is interesting to me is you look at this or Catwoman, and it's some of the worst acting any good actor has put to film, and it makes me wonder, like, did she just
not care?
Yeah, was she sort of the opinion, like, well, this is superhero movies, so I don't have to take it serious, which would be sad, because these movies are part of the reason why we have some good superhero movies, but, like, yeah, she did, like, there was something going on there, I think.
Yeah, she don't care. She's like, I'll take this paycheck. But yeah, so essentially, fighty come together. I truly don't understand the fight sequence, because it was really filmed dark, and then they take Cyclops' eyes, and then they put everyone on the wall, and then the end, you know? And then Rogue's hair turns white. What? Like, none of that made sense to me.
It was a bit of close quarters combat, so I can understand why that was hard to see and understand. It's definitely filmed very dark. Like, I feel like that's very of the time, you know, around the Matrix 2000s.
But
it's just like everything's dark and gritty and
the plan. But yeah. And then at the end, I didn't realize Wolverine is a Canadian.
Yep.
I don't know.
Is
Hugh Jackman Canadian?
I don't know. I'm honestly not sure.
Ryan Reynolds is.
I know that.
And then there's something with a necklace that they don't really explain. Are they supposed to explain?
Oh, because it's like his
army necklace or something.
So it's alluding to, again, the stuff that happens in other ones, but I think he gives it to her. So it's supposed to be this whole like daughter figure, like him saying he's put down roots. Like he's clearly this nomadic type of person when we first meet his character, but then he is saying, I have found enough of a family here with you, Rogue, and the rest of these X-Men that I will return here. And I'm giving you this because it's something that's important to me, and it is me communicating that, like, I'm going to go investigate this thing, ironically, that is linked to this dog tag. But I'm going to go look into it, and then I will be back. I promise I will be back.
I just don't know when Caveman, he had it at one point, unless Caveman has his own necklace. Sabretooth. I just want to call him Caveman.
So again, it's kind of, maybe that's where it's like alluded to in this movie even, that there seems to be some history between Sabretooth and Wolverine, and that's maybe why he's like obsessed with him and like was chasing him, and then was focused on him as opposed to the girl, when he's supposed to clearly, now we know, be there to get the girl. Like he could have, once he crashed that car, if he'd have just shown up, torn her out of the seat and run away, she would have been fine. Or he would have been fine, and like he would have gotten her. But instead, he like decided to fight Logan, and then also was obsessed with his dog tags, and maybe that's because they have history that is explored in other movies.
Got it. Okay, so these things that I don't understand is not because
there are some of it that was not explained in the movie.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And then my final question of the movie is, why doesn't Magneto have a Polish accent?
Because Sir Ian McKellen is smart enough and wise enough in his acting age to be like, I can't pull that off, so I'm not going to.
It was just funny to me. I was like, he's British? Okay. But
I mean, you could argue that
McKellen is
British. And you could argue that maybe when he escaped Poland, probably at that young age, not long after we saw him in that scene, he may have moved to London and then, spent most of his life growing up in London and in England, and may have developed a British accent.
You sound like you're from London. That's all the notes I had.
So let's see. I had a couple of other small things. I will say, okay, so I said most things still stand up. The scream for me, when Sabretooth whispers to Storm, scream for me. It is always felt sexual to me in sort of a rapey kind of way. And it just is like, I don't know. It's awkward, and also sexual tension, and
he says it twice in the movie.
Does he? I thought, when's the other time?
At the end, when they're fighty, he goes, I still need you to scream for me, or something. I didn't like that.
Gotcha. Oh, here's one. In the scene that was very scary, and genuinely we talked about, like, if there was actually a mutant that did this scene in the train station where they turned all the guns on the police officers and then shot them at each other, you would immediately be panicked, and you can see why people would be like, I want mutants to have to register. Like, I'm not saying that's what should happen. I'm just saying, like, you can see where that comes from.
Yeah.
But the other thing I had was also the guy who, after the bullet shot and it's like slowly burrowing into his brain or into his skull or whatever, he's like sitting up kind of like on his knees in like a prayer position. If the bullet's only moving very slowly, why didn't he just move?
I wrote the exact same note. Why did the cops not just
why did he just stand there? Like, what?
Go down, go up, go over,
go any direction. It's moving very slowly for whatever reason, come on. Let's see. Oh, there's a scene where Toad, when they first come to the Liberty Island, is like jumping over onto people and crushing them. That was pretty cool. That was pretty neat. There's the line, what happens to a toad when it's struck by lightning? Same thing that happens to everyone else. I will say, that line, it's one of Halle Berry's. It is really bad. She delivers it very poorly. And yet, 13-year-old Nick totally fist bumped to that. Like, I was like, yeah!
It's written so poorly.
Yeah, it is.
What happens when they get struck by lightning? They get struck by lightning. That's just stupid.
And we already talked about accents. And then the only other thing I had is like, of course, Professor X wins at chess at the very end of the movie, where he's playing chess with Eric Lenscher
In jail. So obviously he comes back.
Yeah.
Magneto comes back. None of them die.
Correct.
Nobody dies.
Correct. Nobody dies. Yep.
Except for Caveman?
Caveman does not die. Maybe.
Yeah. No.
Well, he kind of like he's like thrown off the top of the. But since he's clearly strong and all that jazz, you don't necessarily know.
Yeah. So they don't die. Because I thought Mystique died, but then she doesn't.
She does not.
She comes back at the end.
Yep.
Yeah. So.
All right. Well, then we've reached the end of our podcast where we have to give our heart rating and our renewing of vows. So for starters, movie lovers, the 0 to 5 hearts is supposed to be a relatively objective measure of how good we think this movie is in terms of its quality. And then the renew your vows is much more subjective of like, would you care to watch this movie again? That's the renew your vows. So Danielle, how many hearts and would you renew?
I actually give this like a 4 out of 5.
Nice.
I think it stayed to like 90 minutes.
Uh-huh.
It stayed to basic backstory.
Uh-huh.
There wasn't too much I didn't understand.
Uh-huh.
And I enjoy the characters and I want to know more about them.
Very cool.
Would I renew it? If Hayden wants to watch it, then sure.
Okay.
And do I need to watch the other 9 or whatever? No, probably not.
Nah.
But I am
probably
excited
not.
for the Deadpool, the new Deadpool.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear that. That's very exciting. I think so. I would renew. It has been some time since I saw this, but I was actually impressed by how much I thought, as I said, in many ways it holds up. I'm sure there'll be some reason where I choose to watch it again in the future, whether it's Hayden or some other excuse. I think that's very likely. It being Hayden is perhaps not likely, because when you stop and think about this, it'd be the equivalent of me being excited to watch a movie from the 70s when I was growing up. So I don't know that that's going to be his excitement, unfortunately. Fair. But who knows? Things are different. And I also gave it a 4.25. I had it at 4.5, and then I was like, nah, it's not quite that good, but similar to what you just said. It's a solid B effort for sure.
Cool.
All right. Well, that's everything. And so knowing that this comes out the month that it does, the end of May, Dani, do you have anything to plug?
No, I don't.
Not in any shows or anything yet?
No, I'm on hiatus right now. I'm taking a sabbatical.
No, classes and the yoga teaching and...
Yeah, if you know where I live and you know where I teach, come take my classes.
Okay.
I'm focusing on learning how to be a mother and not just a caretaker of a hamster.
I love that for you. And where can they find you on socials to, follow what you are doing with said hamster?
With said hamster. Everything is at Dani Miami 4. So give me a little follow, give me a little message and say, what up?
All right. And then I am on Twitter. I am also on Instagram, and I am on Letterboxd. That was the other one I was trying to struggle to remember. That is all at Nic Loves Movies. That's NICLUV Love. Nic Loves Movies on all of those platforms. And then, Dani, where can they find us on social medias for the podcast itself?
Yeah, it's at N Love with Movies. That's the letter N.
There you
Love
go.
with Movies on basically everything.
Yep,
Some
pretty much.
of them are like underscores and stuff, but they're all linked on our pages.
I actually think we're all of the different socials are now that at. They're all the exact at, but we are more prolific on some versus others because we're still waiting to see which ones become the actual winners, and we will wait to see when that happens.
Okay, and we have to stop talking because Hayden is about to scream. It is time for his bath and for bed. So with that, Nic, I love you.
I love you, Dani.
And we love you, movie lovers.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Oh, say goodbye, Hayden.
Bye, Hayden.
Oh. In love with movies. Da-da-da.
I'm getting a call from Craig. Hold on. I'm going to have to cut this out. Hey, man, what's up? Is everything okay? I am. We're recording our podcast right now. What's up? Our cat's outside. Okay, thank you very much for letting us know. Do you know which direction he went to? No, I'm glad you called me, man. Thank you. We're going to head out there and find him. Thanks, bud.